Welcome to episode 27 of the Tax Professionals podcast. In this episode, you will learn how to figure out what career success looks like for you and how to achieve it with this episode's guest, James Perry, a finance career and exams coach.
Welcome to the Tax Professionals podcast, the podcast dedicated to helping you improve your tax career. Here's your host, Jack Bonehill.
Having a successful career is one of those things you probably want. I mean, success is great, right? So why wouldn't you? The word success gets used a lot, but you probably don't ever stop to think about what it actually means. You wouldn't be alone if you automatically start thinking of a tax partner, head of tax, or high salary when picturing someone successful. However, the reality is that success means different things to different people. If you really want to achieve career success, you should start by understanding what success means to you and then figuring out a way to achieve it. Otherwise, you could spend a long time working towards the wrong goal, which ultimately leaves you feeling unsatisfied. In this episode, James Perry shares the story of his path to success and provides his advice on how you can achieve the same through his 7-step solution to a successful career. James used to be an associate director at Grant Thornton Belfast and financial controller for WKD. Yes, the drinks company, and he started coaching finance professionals in 2016. He's helped hundreds of people in relation to their professional exams and careers, helping them to achieve success. So, if you're serious about achieving success in your career, this episode will definitely help. You may also be interested in my free course, which will help you to accelerate your career progression towards success for you. You can sign up in the show notes at thetaxprofessionalspodcast.com/TTPP27. And that just stands for the Tax Professionals Podcast episode 27. Without further ado, let's get to it. So just to start off with then today, James, could you just explain to us what you say to people in terms of what you do when you get asked?
Funny, Jack, whenever people ask me the question, who are you? And I'll maybe phrase it that way. People mostly always respond with their job title, don't they? Whereas I go, I do it very much who I am and what I do in 4 words: carer, coach, academic, and adventurer. And that sums up everything that I do. So what do I do primarily? Believe it or not, I'm actually, my first priority is I'm full-time carer for my father. The second thing that I do is my accounting success coach business, and I'll probably talk about more about that and how that developed moving forward. And then I'm also an associate teaching fellow with the University of Ulster. So essentially what that means is I work part-time for the University of Ulster as well. So a number of different hats there. And the adventure, the academic and the adventure piece, I suppose, is, well, I've always been academic in nature, but the adventure is I do love my travel as well. So I always say that. It's all I always say in 4 words who I actually am and what I do.
Yeah, I think that's a nice way to put it, actually, because it's always the same on TV as well. When people go on a TV show, they always give the name and then the job title, and people are defined by much more than the job title. So in relation to, I suppose, both the coaching then and the academic part of it, could you just tell us a little bit more about, I suppose, your coaching business and how you help people?
Yeah, the coaching business, very, very quick snapshot of where it came from. I simply woke up in the middle of the night about 4 years ago, believe it or not, with an idea. And it came from my own frustrations with trying to become a qualified accountant, and then also with my staff's frustrations. And to me, Jack, it all seemed common sense, the answers to the questions. And I went, okay, why not sort of, grow this into a business? But it was more of a hobby at the start. And I can still remember my first client. I actually went to their house. They were local to me. And I had a pen and a piece of paper and not one clue what I was going to say. And that was the start of it all. And now, lo and behold, here we are. For about 2 years, it was 18 months to 2 years, it was very much a hobby. And in the last couple of years, I've actually had to make the business work. And lo and behold, it's came to now. I've coached people across the world. I have coached 160 plus people. I have a 90% pass rate. And what I do is twofold. The pass rate relates to the first element, which is the exam coaching element, which is talking about, Jack, what I say I fill in the gaps. So therefore, it is talking about the mindset. It is talking about the clarity and the direction of where you're going. It's talking about how do you actually learn, which a lot of us have never been told. Talking about also putting those study plans in place, and then how can you actually execute on the big day, those exam techniques. And then I hold people to account as well through marking of mock papers. And the way I describe that process of marking past papers is I will decimate the paper. So I tear it apart. And a lot of my clients will say, James, I've never got feedback like that before. So that's really what I do in the exam coaching piece of the business. The next piece of the business, Jack, which is the new element, is the career coaching. And this is really the way I can sum it up. The course is going to launch fully now in June 21. It's called the Clear Career Accelerator. And where that's coming from, and my strap line for it is, well, you're not going to get this learning in your CPD. So really what this is, it's a very much an 8-module. Well, at this stage, it's going to be a 10-week course. And essentially, I'm taking you through from one end to the other about how can you actually position yourself as premium in order to accelerate your career. So that's the next stage of the business that's being launched in June. I'm actually really excited about that as well.
Yeah, I mean, that sounds great. I mean, I would like to talk about that a little bit more because that's what I think listeners will get a lot of benefit from, because obviously when you're doing exams and stuff, although obviously having the support, etc., around that is nice and becoming qualified is nice, I almost feel like you've got structure around that because, you've got this exam to do, it's on this date. And although you could need help, you know what you need to do to get there. Whereas once you're out the exam environment, you're suddenly in this massive pond where there's like 100 different directions you could go in, and it could be a bit overwhelming and you have no idea where to start, don't know what's suitable for you. How do you even go about progressing? Because I think a lot of firms out there probably don't have a structured progression plan in place or something along those lines. So I think it's where people will probably get a lot of overwhelm and maybe even anxiety thinking about what the best way to go about that is.
The way that I described that phenomenon, whenever you qualify, whether it's accountancy or tax or any profession, but especially our related profession, is that you know Neil Armstrong, the first man to walk on the moon. And whenever he came back to Earth, he became a recluse. The reason being is because he went, well, what next do I do? What can I do? Because he'd done it all. And I see that phenomenon happening time and time again with professionals, in that they have spent so much time and so much effort getting to the pinnacle of passing the exams. And once they do that and they come out of contract, they go, what next? What do I do?
Yeah. And a lot of people, I think, would almost expect just becoming qualified to like give you everything you need in your career to get promoted, to get your pay rises, etc. But it's only part of it, isn't it?
Absolutely.
It's only part of it.
Absolutely. And because you're maybe a really good auditor, or you're maybe a really good tax junior, or whatever that may be, that still doesn't prepare you for the next steps. That's the tough bit. And also as well, Jack, most people never get career clarity. They never understand what they want to do in their lives. It actually took me to 36 years of age, whenever I started this business, to actually understand, yes, I love helping people, and this is where I'm getting my job satisfaction.
Yeah. And I think it's a good area that people need help in as well, because as you said, well, as I say, really, there's so many things that you can do after qualifying. And most people probably get stuck at, I suppose, that level after just qualifying for such a long time because they don't really know what to do next. So yeah, it's a hard thing to do. Definitely. I mean, I was fortunate enough to have some coaching actually just after I qualified. So that helped me to get on track straight away. But for people who don't have that, it must be tough.
And it's the awareness as well. It's the awareness as well that you maybe actually need to go and get coached, or go and seek that person who will help you drive you forward. Most people don't even have that awareness.
Absolutely. And I think there's probably a bit of stigma around having a coach as well. Because when I was being coached at the time, my other half would say, oh, you're getting counselling, and that makes it sound quite negative, as if there's something wrong with me. But coaching's not about that at all, is it?
Absolutely not. And it's also quite a stigma in our profession where, accounting, again, I'm putting accounting and tax together, where if you get help or seek assistance, it sometimes can be looked upon as a sign of weakness, and it's not. Asking for help and asking questions on what you don't know or what you need to know is, in my opinion, one of the greatest signs of strength you can do.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, everything you're saying is like things that I am so for. It's going to be close to getting me fired up and rambling a lot in this episode, so I want to try and keep on track. So just to start off with then, because obviously it's great progressing and accelerating your career after you've qualified, but success is obviously going to mean different things to different people. So when you're talking to people you're coaching, etc., how do you define success in a career sense? You know, do you need to become a tax partner? Do you need to be a head of tax to be considered successful?
Well, what I tend to do is I give the example of my own journey. My own journey was that 10 years ago, I was being fast tracked to partnership in Grant Thornton in audit. And so I had this, and it was said to me, I was promoted quite quickly. So I was put into senior manager, associate director role very, very young, and said, look, there's a position here in 5 years' time if you grasp it or want to go for it. And then further on down the line, I changed my mind on it. But that 10 years ago, Jack, was my version of success. It was the trappings of material things. It was the money. It was this, I'm saying status in inverted commas here. It is these things. And that is great but you must enjoy it. You have to see that as a vocation, not necessarily as a job, because that's to get to that level in audit or in tax, head of tax, tax partner, it has to be a vocation for you. If it's not, which it wasn't for me, I then progressed on in my journey. So, and my definition of success has changed full circle, probably, where I'll give an example now for me, and this is the example I give. I'm now taking care of my dad full time, and that to me is a huge success. I've been given that privilege. Also, what I've been able to do pre-COVID is I've been able to work and travel at the same time. That to me is a massive success. And it's me working on my own terms and having the flexibility. You know, for example, this morning, I have done no work today, apart from joining you in this podcast. You know, if I want to work tomorrow, and I will do it, or for example, if I want to do it on a Saturday night, I will do it. That flexibility to me is success. So therefore, it has changed probably as I've got older and slightly more wiser. And the definition of success does change for people depending on the journey you've taken. Absolutely.
So it sounds like. But if you want, I was going to say, so it sounds like that. Oh, I'm sorry, James.
Sorry, I was going to say just the last line there, Jack. I was going to say, if you want to become a tax partner and head of tax, if you know you're going to enjoy it, by all means, go for it. That's fantastic. If you want to go and carve something else out for yourself, go and do that, because that's equally successful in my eyes.
Yeah, I'm completely with you there. And at the start of your career journey, you might not know exactly what success looks like to you at that point until you've got the experience, until you've seen what it would be potentially like to be in a role like that, for example. But it sounds like for you had a turning point where you realised that your priorities were different to what they were when you first started, thinking that partner might have been the way for you. And so, kind of, then how did you even go about that realization? Because I'm sure people would be interested so that they could do that themselves.
The realization for me is whenever you are always one of the last in the office and you're always one of the first in the next morning, and that's what you have to do to become, head of tax or head or partner in accounting or whatever that may be. You have to put in the hard yards. Then after you leave the office, you have to go to networking events. You have to go and try and win business. You have got sales targets. You still have to be on the phone to clients. You have to take clients for golf on the weekends. Whenever it got to that level for me, I then went, no, I can't do this anymore. That was the watershed moment where I went. Whereas I knew my boss, who I had a lot of time for and who was actually really, really good to me, he lapped that up. He really enjoyed that. I didn't so much, and that's where I went, okay, this isn't really for me anymore. So that was the watershed moment.
And it's obviously completely okay to be like that, isn't it? It's different strokes for different folks at the end of the day, and it's not seen as a failure to not go there or because you want something different. It's just realizing that you don't want that. And to be honest, if you would have gone for that, you'd have probably ended up making yourself quite unhappy. And then there's no way you would define that as success if you were there then, would it?
Absolutely not. For example, Christmas time there, or sorry, in January 21, a client of mine who were in their last chance for qualifying with Chartered Accountants Ireland, for example, they were in their last chance, and I got them over the line to pass their final exam. And to get that text message and say, James, I couldn't have done this without you, that was huge success in my eyes. That gave me so much job satisfaction. So as you say, different strokes for different folks. Absolutely.
Absolutely. I mean, we've already talked about this a little bit, but I suppose just for completeness now, do you think there's any other misconceptions or any common misconceptions about what success is? You've already mentioned like salary and status. Do you think there's any other ones out there?
The other thing that's definitely prevalent out there in social media is that you just kick back and if you do the right things, you become successful. No, you've got to put the hard yards in. And whatever you
Yeah.
want to do, you have to put the hard yards in. It's taken me so much, it's taken me a lot of effort to get my own business towards gotten to the coaching business. And I beat my head against the brick wall so many times saying, what am I doing? You know, the time, Jack, where the business hadn't really started and I had just left my job to care for my father, and that 18-month period with having not one penny come into my bank account. That is whenever the hard yards actually start, whenever I had to go and create something for myself. So this thing in social media about all success and it's this fleeting thing, and you're sitting on a yacht and you're kicking. No, that's absolute rubbish. You are the hard yards that you're doing in the background is never maybe portrayed in social media. So that's the thing for success. It's very, very rare that you're going to give a pot of gold presented to you. You have to work for it.
Yeah, unless you're one of those very lucky few that's born into a super rich family or something like that. Then absolutely you've got to work for it. How did you manage to manage that then, obviously caring for your dad and starting up the business at the same time?
Believe it or not, I've had caring in my life. I had to care for my mum before for many years. So the caring end has always been in my blood, I suppose. And believe it or not, it's molded my personality type as an empath, which then actually gives itself to the coaching, believe it or not. So that actually helped. But with my dad's scenario and how I managed that, essentially what I done was I converted a back room in the house into an office. And, the flexibility of setting up. So I was doing a lot of online stuff even before COVID. And that's what made it so much easier for me. So, and the other thing I changed from as well was being a lot more flexible. So I can quite easily have a coaching session at 8:30 on an evening or 9 o'clock on a Saturday morning. So that flexibility has worked completely with it, And if I have something I have to do with my father, take him to a hospital or something like that, I can actually mold everything around that. So that's where the benefit or the success as such in terms of flexibility, that's what actually helps out a lot. Whereas if I was completely office based, etc., it couldn't work. None of it could work. So
so you basically ended up, I suppose, working around the needs of your dad then.
Absolutely,
which is it's a smart way to do it.
It's the the whole thing about. There's a good old saying is a lot of people they live to work, whereas it's living to work or working to live, and it's very much the working to live for me where it now gives, believe it or not, it actually gives me the same income now, if not more than what I had 10 years ago whenever I was in Grant Thornton in senior management. So it's amazing how it's actually worked out. And it's the other thing about multiple streams of income. So I have the university work, I have the coaching business, and also I've got a partnership with a friend of mine in commercial property. And that's another thing to be, if people are out there sort of going, something, I would love to have a sideline business. Think about that, because the multiple streams of income can actually give you that flexibility. And if you want to do it, if you want to do something on the side, do it on what they call, the 5 to 9 hours. Do a couple of hours a week, 2 or 3 hours 2 or 3 times a week in order to expand maybe on what your idea is, and you just never know what comes from it.
Yeah, I suppose that's exactly what I've done with the podcast. Is I work 9 till 5 as a tax manager. Then outside of work, I put in 5 hours a week, which is the only time I will spend on the podcast, because I don't want
I suppose, life to just be work
Absolutely.
in some form. Although I do enjoy the podcast as well, I still want to enjoy those other things too. So moving on then, I suppose to almost complete this section then, do you think there's anything in particular that tends to get in the way of people achieving success for them in their career?
Yeah, themselves. But the reason why I can say it with such certainty is because it happens to me all the time. It's the good old saying, if you've ever heard tell of it, the eye can't see itself. So you're doing stuff that you don't realize you're doing it. So the good old, what they call the self-saboteur creeps up, and it creeps up subconsciously, and you don't even know what happens, and you're sabotaging the progress that you're making. And then that comes around and goes cyclical, and then the self-doubt creeps in and all that sort of stuff. So to me, the vast majority of instances of things that stop your success are all based with yourself. Your mind is the number one thing that you have in your life, and it can be your best friend, but it also can be your worst enemy on occasions. And whenever it is your worst enemy, it's actually doing that job for a reason, believe it or not. Because as my exam clients will know this, and my coaching clients will know this, I call it the little monkey. It's the little monkey that's working the controls in your mind, and it loves throwing a spanner in the works, and it loves telling you lies in order to keep you safe, so you don't take that chance, or you don't go out of the comfort zone, or it doesn't want you to go and learn that hard thing. So it's always yourself that stops you, in my opinion, moving moving forward and things.
So I suppose natural next question then is, should people be out the side of their comfort zone more? Because if you're outside your comfort zone all the time, I imagine that's going to be a horrible way of living. So is there some form of balance that you should have between your comfort zone and being outside of it?
Absolutely. And what I tend to do, and I suppose it's even more prevalent given the conditions that we're all in at the minute, is going back to basics. So I do have my own coach, and she had said to me that, James, what's your diet like? And I went, it's awful at the minute. She went, well, you have to get that sorted. She said, what's your sleep like? I went, it's not so good. Okay, we need to get that dealt with. What's the exercise like? Well, I haven't done that much in a while. Okay. So, what's your vitamins and minerals like? Okay, let's supplement that and get that. So it's all the basic stuff. Jack, people are looking for this magic potion, are looking for this silver bullet that's going to change everything for them. That really, again, is not going to work, in terms of you need to get the foundations right in order to keep the mindset level, to keep yourself clear, to stop any brain fog or any lack of clarity. You need to go back to basics, in my opinion. And look, and I'm the example of that, where, the self-saboteur can ride roughshod over your ideas. But once you go back to basics, it can help balance it a bit more. So I completely agree. Balance is the key word you've just mentioned.
It's interesting you should say that, actually, because I think the basics are the stuff that's easy for us to forget about, particularly sleep. I think a lot of people, especially before COVID anyway, were probably having less sleep than what they needed. Yeah. And getting enough sleep will make, in my opinion anyway, will make you so much more effective throughout the day if you get the right amounts, which could be the difference between you having to work a few extra hours because your concentration was better and not having to do it. So for me, the basics, including sleep, absolutely essential.
It's the way I call it, your body battery. And your body battery is actually, in my opinion, powered up via the basics. And if your battery is half empty or half full, whichever way you want to look at it, but if it's not in full power, you're not operating in full power. So hence that does really mitigate the good work you're actually trying to get to.
Yeah, no, I'm completely with you on that one. I imagine anyway that a lot of other tax professionals, like me, before they started working in tax and applying for jobs, etc., spend some time thinking about, I suppose, exactly why they wanted to work in tax, because they like certain aspects of it. They might have wanted to work with legislation that always changes, etc. Mm-hmm. So they have a bit of an idea at that point what success is going to look like for them. At that point, it is fairly high level. So do you kind of recommend at any point that people should almost reevaluate or even think in more detail about exactly what success means to them and how could they go about doing that?
Funny, I put a video up about this the start of the week regarding experimentation and to go and try different things. Now, if you're in a big enough organization that's got many different departments, I would actually go and seek out perhaps secondment opportunities in different areas. They talk about going broad. I would actually maybe try and advise that. I didn't really do that, to be honest with you. And I wish I did and got more exposure out there to different departments and different structures and the way different businesses operate. So that's the first thing I would definitely say in terms of career success for you. Go and experiment as many different things as you need, because then you will find out perhaps what you enjoy, and you will be exponentially more successful doing something that you enjoy as opposed to not. So that's definitely the main thing I would suggest with that. Go broad first, get that exposure. That maybe could be in conjunction with your training contract. And then once you qualify or you're getting maybe closer towards senior management, then start to think about going narrow and into that area that is more suited to you. So absolutely experimentation.
Yeah, fair enough. I think you're probably right that a lot of people who work in smaller firms particularly will not get the opportunity to do that. But I imagine even within their actual job role itself, there's going to be different areas that they prefer more to others, or maybe even some areas that they really dislike. So then could they try and carve out a career where they do more of the things they like and less of the stuff they don't?
See, here's a wacky idea that I tell my career coaching clients. Do you see, if you're in a small practice or you're not getting that exposure, go and volunteer in another organization. Honestly, go and work for a charity, or go and try and get other exposure in other areas. You just do not know what will click with you. If you told me 10 years ago that I'd be, having my own business and also part-time lecturer in a local university, I would have went, James, you're crazy. But it is that experimentation. It is trying something new and different. It is, as you were talking about previously, getting out of the comfort zone. You don't know
Yeah.
until you don't know until you go and try it. So even if you are in a smaller practice and you want to go and try something else, go and do it. Even if you've got a client in an industry that you enjoy, go and have the conversation with them. Go and take them out for lunch and understand what's going on.
Yeah.
I am always about thinking outside the box. There are many different ways to skin a cat, as the good old saying goes. So be creative in that experimentation.
Yeah, no, that's so true. I mean, I've just even thought there had a thought there about like working in tax. So we can volunteer for the professional body, the CIOT or the ATT, for example. And so if, I don't know, some people who work in tax will just be stuck doing compliance work in their day job, like doing tax returns, etc. But they might be interested in, say, wanting to get involved in the technical side of tax more. And there's plenty of committees with the professional bodies where that could be a possibility. Same for lots of different things as well. So, I mean, even just doing volunteering through that could massively help get the experience in different areas and figure out what you like.
Yeah. There's a good old saying. The good old saying, Jack. It's not what you know; it's who you know. I
Yeah.
actually believe that's wrong. I actually think it's all about who knows you. So I know it's all online networking now, but go into those different organizations. You'll see different things on LinkedIn. You'll see different things on Meetup. You've quite rightly said about your institute. There's loads of different things you can go and get involved in and get exposure and talk to people to go and get as much information as you can on certain things that you may like, which in turn will lead to success for you. So, and you've got more information than ever before on your fingertips on your phone, and you can actually go and find out about that stuff. So if you're interested in it, I don't think there's any excuse now not to go out and not to go and find out a bit more about it.
Yeah, absolutely. That's an interesting way to look at it anyway. It's not who you know, it's who knows you, because I suppose if they don't know you, but you know them, then it's a bit of a pointless relationship, isn't it? But in terms of getting people to know you, so I think a problem that a lot of people have when they go to networking events is they try and talk to, say, 100 people, and then everyone's going to forget them as soon as they go, because all they've done is gone over to them and hand out a business card or something similar. So do you think it's better to, I don't know, just talk to 2 or 3 people and get to know them really well and make an impacting I suppose, relationship with them instead. What would you say about that?
What I would do, so an example of that, believe it or not, was I used to go to networking meetings that I didn't want to be at. So whenever I went to them, what vibes would I be giving off? I wouldn't be giving off that many positive vibes. So especially if I didn't want to be there, I walked in, I handed out business cards as if they were playing cards, and I walked back out. So I was in the wrong environment for me to thrive. So that's the first thing. Go and find that environment that you will thrive in and you will enjoy. So again, I said you can go and look at those different sources. That's the first thing. The second thing, though, is like a preemptive strike even before that, Jack, and you're a prime example of it, is that you are making yourself known in your community and your tribe by this podcast. You are on LinkedIn. You're becoming visible. I've made myself visible on LinkedIn. And now LinkedIn is the biggest land grab for visibility that there is now. You can get eyeballs on you. You can get people to know who you are. It's all about you. So I would do that first. Because then if you do go into these events, and hopefully that these events and maybe face-to-face will be starting to run sooner rather than later, people then get to know you. So for example, like this is crazy. I was in Birmingham. So, I live in the north of Ireland, 20 miles south of Belfast. But I was in Birmingham airport one day and a guy ran across the departure lounge and shook my hand and went, "Are you the exam guy?" Like, what? So that's what I mean, is go and build a platform for yourself first. And then go and find the people that you want to hang out with. Because once you're known a bit more, they will be your platform for success because they will help you. And in turn, it's a thing called, either you call it the value debt or the law of reciprocity, where you do something for someone and in return, they will want to do it for you psychologically. So build that platform, get yourself known, give value to people, and wait till you see success actually happen. That's what's happened to me.
Yeah. And it's funny you should mention LinkedIn anyway, because that's exactly where I first came across your content, because it was shared by someone in my network.
Right.
So it's obviously working.
Absolutely.
So we've touched upon this a little bit already, but obviously finding out exactly what success means for each individual person will be unique to them, and only they can really figure out exactly what that means. Have you kind of got any steps that people can go through to try and do that, to find out exactly what success is for them?
Yeah. The first thing, believe it or not, I actually call it the 7-step solution. And I say this to my career coaching clients. So the first thing is understand why you're doing what you're doing. If you don't have a clue why you're doing it, it's a difficult road. The next element in that, so first of all, find out why you want to do what you're doing. The second one is to gain clarity then in what you want to do. And maybe what I mean by that is, what are your values? It's an exercise I've done, is to understand the personal values that I have. And by doing that, Jack, I now understand why certain things didn't work out or why other things did work out. The other step 3, is to actually, the good old thing that I think maybe you've seen or we've all started to see now, is the fixed versus growth mindset, is to actually adopt that mindset of, okay, I actually want to grow and I want to improve. So let's take this on. Let's go and find the people. And then the next step is take action on that. Step number 5 then is what I normally say is to keep inspired. And how you can keep inspired is to keep on remembering that first step, why you're doing what you're going to do. Step number 6 then, what I talk about is protecting your psychology, and it's what I talked about previously, is to try and keep that little monkey that drives your brain at bay. So therefore, do the basics right. Give yourself some time away for yourself, exercise, diet, etc., etc. And then point number 7 essentially is to do the first 6 steps and do it again and again and again. And that's where, if you do that and get yourself clarity, take action, remain inspired, live and work by your values and protect and
Mhm.
look after yourself, you will see success happen. Whatever success means for you, though.
Yeah. I mean, it's almost like the circle of life, but the circle of success in a career sense instead. But what I think people probably neglect the most out of those steps you just mentioned is figuring out or understanding what their own values are. Because particularly as you've mentioned earlier, like you found out that you really weren't a fan of going to these networking events. You didn't want to be working these long hours, etc. So you figured out what your values were and what you wanted, and then you were able to go and do something that was in line with those. I think a lot of people do neglect that when it comes to their career because they don't kind of align the two. They try and separate their personal lives and their career, but really it's one of the same, isn't it?
Absolutely, it's all life. I was just going to say that people. I remember someone saying to me, I questioned them about how did they get a work-life balance, and then James, that's your problem. It's not work-life balance; it's life. You know what I meant? Yes, I've got my life in balance, and that was the massive difference. And an example of that, Jack, with especially with my personal values, and I've done a lot of thinking about this. So I've got my top 5 personal values, which are pairs of words. And my first top value is empathy and compassion. And I suppose that's because of my caring background all my life, you know. And now that I'm in a role where I can empathize and show compassion, and people are vulnerable with me and talking about how do they want to improve, etc., that's naturally a natural fit into what I'm doing now. Whereas
Mhm.
beforehand, if you are, you know, we all know about the cut and thrust of the professional life, where sometimes it's a wee bit more ruthless. That's maybe where the empathy and compassion wasn't showing through for me. So it makes
Mhm.
makes perfect sense, the fact that that wasn't necessarily working in terms of that. So go and find, so for your listeners, Jack, go and find your personal values. Go and Google a list of values, think about it, write it down, what's your top 5, and then if you're going for promotion, or if you want to go and look at a different industry, or you're interested in something else, just make sure your values line up broadly. It's the good old 80-20 rule. If you're 80% there, fine, go for it.
Yeah. And I imagine it as well, though. So this is a question that I think a lot of people would be interested in is, I suppose when you're growing up and you start work, etc., you get accustomed to believe that you might want certain things rather than, if you look deep inside, is it something that you actually want? Is there a way that people can differentiate between the two? I suppose put aside the ones that they've been almost coded to believe is true, but it just turns out it isn't.
So how do you find out the difference between what you thought you were going to do and what you actually want to do?
Yeah, I suppose more so what you believe that you want, but you might be accustomed to believe that you want it rather than do actually want it.
Yeah, it's all about that gut reaction, honestly. I think in any walk of life. So we're obviously in a very much the consumer society, and we're bombarded with information 24/7. So therefore, we can be quite easily manipulated and convinced into believing something we want to do, but the gut very rarely very rarely lies. When have you made a conscious decision with your mind and it hasn't worked out, and you've went against your gut, and invariably it hasn't came through? Whereas if you are in a scenario and you've got that wee inkling in your stomach, that the way your stomach goes nuts, that's generally not going to be right for you. I actually think even neuroscience is now proven that there's neurons in your gut. Your gut thinks for you.
Yeah.
So you know it's sometimes the way what you feel is more correct or more in tune, as opposed to what you think. So that's the thing I would actually really put out there is, does it feel right? And if it feels right,
Yeah.
you're generally on the right path.
Yeah. So almost don't neglect your emotions as well,
Absolutely.
attached to it.
We know about the buzzwords at the minute, emotional intelligence and things like that. And it is right. That's where I think the fourth industrial revolution is going. We're stepping away from the cut and thrust of, you know, that industrial revolution thinking that my dad was part of, for example. Whereas now, you have to manage people. We deal with people all the time. And if you deal with your staff poorly, or if you deal with clients poorly, and you're not going to use your emotional intelligence and feel your way through and build relationships and build rapport, it's not going to work for you.
Yeah, absolutely. And especially in a tax and an accounting career, you're dealing with clients all the time. It's like the biggest part of the job. So having that empathy there is absolutely vital. I suppose on that note as well, then, so emotional intelligence, then, in your opinion, sounds to be an important thing.
Yeah.
But then are there any other kind of particular skills or attributes that you think are kind of universal and important for people to have in order to, I suppose, be successful in terms of their career?
The first thing, well, I've mentioned a couple of them. Number one is try and empathize with the stakeholder you're dealing with, whether that's a member of staff, whether that's your boss, or whether that's a client. The next one is it's all about you. So get people to know who you are. And then actually, I know in some of the briefing notes you sent across, you mentioned one word, which I was absolutely useless at. And that was delegation. If you get good at delegate, if you look at all the best leaders, they're fantastic at delegating, and they're fantastic at delegating the right stuff to the right people. And that's what I was really poor at early in my career. And because I was very much a detailed person, I would have kept the hard work for myself. Now, that was at a detriment to me because I was working even more hours. It was also a detriment to my staff because they weren't learning as much. So if the one thing I would say is definitely to your listeners is that do the Eisenhower matrix. You know, the urgent, non-urgent matrix?
Yeah, so I got that from Stephen Covey's 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. Yeah. Is it that one?
I would use that to actually even, would be the start of a week or midweek or whatever it may be, and put your tasks in there and say, okay, who's the right person for these tasks that I can effectively delegate to free my time to actually go and add proper value, not only to my stakeholders, but to my career. Because I didn't have enough time. Partly, Jack, partly the reason that I stopped wanting to go for the partnership route is I didn't give myself enough scope either, because I was quite young, I was very inexperienced, and I didn't delegate properly. So that's definitely one skill that I would do, but you also have to do it in a proper manner. So you have to go and explain properly to the person what you want. You have to, both agree the monitoring and how that's going to work. What are the outcomes of the said delegation and the piece of work that has to be done? That all has to be done properly, because otherwise it turns into a massive, mess.
Yeah.
But that's one skill that I tell every one of my coaching clients, please consider more delegation, because you're not going to free yourself up or give yourself enough scope to go and add value to others, which is the way you're noticed in order to have career progression.
Yeah, I'm with you. I think it's an absolutely vital skill, particularly to not burn out and just be so busy doing everything yourself. But at the same time, I do understand why people find it so difficult to do, particularly if you're, like you, as you said, a detailed person. You want to make sure that things are right. So it becomes hard almost to trust people to do what you want them to do. But as you mentioned, that upfront time, which you might have to take, say, 15 to 30 minutes up front with someone to fully explain exactly what you want them to do and help them understand what it is you're trying to achieve. That might seem like a lot of time then, but if that's going to save you like 5, 6, maybe even 7 hours or more in the long run, then that 30 minutes is such a well invested 30 minutes. You've freed up your time, you've given your staff the opportunity to grow and to learn something. It's just, for me, it's a win-win in all directions. Although I do appreciate it is a tough skill to master, particularly when we're talking about accounting and tax, where being technically correct is exceptionally important.
And the most of our personality profiles are perfectionists in nature. And the only thing you can get, or the only way we believe we can get things right is to do it ourselves, which is actually incorrect.
It isn't. I mean, I had a completely separate episode where I had a person who was a project manager, and he was like an expert almost in delegation, because they have to do it when they're project managing. They can't even do the tasks themselves. So for anyone who's interested in learning a bit more about delegation, how to get better at it, I can highly recommend listen to that episode. What about saying no as well, James?
Very difficult for me. Very difficult for me. I am inherently a people pleaser. It comes from the empath. It comes from my caring background, where, and I've learned this dramatically as well, Jack, where the last person I ever looked after was myself. And hence the reason why now I had to go and learn about it, because it was through that watershed moment. I went, okay, right, James, you have to actually look after yourself. And you have to be able to say no, but say it in a very diplomatic manner. That's a massive skill that I've had to learn. I'm still not particularly good at it, to be honest. I will put it out there to say it's a very Irish trait, actually, not to say no, because it's a very social thing to go and help others, and irrespective of its personal life or career, you do have to discern who you have to say no to a lot more. So you're very, very right in putting that up there, and it's a skill. It is a skill, believe it or not.
I suppose it's figuring out what to say no to as well, isn't it? Figuring out what's the most important thing for you to do, and those which are just time wasters almost.
And that time management matrix, the Eisenhower matrix, the urgent, non-urgent, is very good at doing that. A very, very simple exercise. Get a file page, split it into 4, and just brainstorm what you need in each quadrant. And there's stuff you can delegate, and there's other stuff is just needs to be binned, and then there's other stuff you can just say no to and park it. It's a very, very, very basic but very good technique to do.
It is, and the thing is as well, if we spread ourselves too thin anyway, then we don't do anything well.
No.
So focusing on just a few things is much better than trying to do a lot of things not well.
Absolutely, and I keep on going back to that good old word value. It's if you can do something well and you can help others, and you're visible in showing that to others, that's whenever success comes in. Again, I'm going success in inverted commas, and that's how you climb the ladder. But again, you need to give yourself the scope to do that.
Absolutely. I'm going to slightly challenge one of your views earlier, I think, about working hard, because I quite like the thought of working smart rather than working hard. Appreciate that you can't obviously do zero work at all, but where do you kind of stand on this then? Do you think in order to become like a partner, etc., you need to work hard, or do you think it can be possible to work smart and reduce the hours so that you can be a partner without working a ridiculous amount of hours, for example?
It depends what it's in. Now, I think you're quite right in bringing that up, and I will slightly caveat what I was talking about working hard, and that you have to work hard in the right things, and that's where the delegation piece comes in. So if you want to become head of tax or a partner or whatever, you have to get business into the firm. Your role turns from going from technical and being a staff led person to then going in and becoming a salesperson. So therefore, you need to work hard on those elements and delegate the staff management, delegate client, the detail of whatever tax file that you're pulling together, or whichever return or whatever. You have to delegate that down. So I would certainly say work hard on the things that matter, and you need to go and understand those things that matter. And that's where the career clarity comes in. It's something I was completely unaware of 10 years ago. And that I was at a point of burnout where I was all things to all men, where you don't have to necessarily be. So I think you're quite right in that. Again, I've mentioned this word so many times, I don't want to mention it again, but I'll have to, is identify those areas of value that you have to add to others. The term out there now is, and you probably hear it, is business partnering. That term is everywhere, but the principles of that is absolutely right. So if you want to become partner, who do you need to impress on? Who do you need to show the value? Whose needs do you need to meet in terms of stakeholders in order for you to get up the ladder and work on those elements, work hard on those elements? So that's what I'm saying about hard versus smart. And what you can do, and it's a technique even to my exam coaching clients, you can do shorter but harder bursts of work. I'm very much about doing 90-minute bursts and then taking maybe 10 minutes and going get a cup of tea or do a lap of the block or whatever you need to do, go for a walk. So
Yeah.
I think what you're saying is definitely right, but work hard on those things that add value, but give yourself a slight bit of a break as well.
Yeah, that's a good way to look at it. So we have touched upon some of these things already again, but I suppose just to have it all kind of concise and in one place, in terms of people where it is important that they want to grow their career and they want to keep climbing the ladder, etc. What kind of are your top tips then to do that?
I'm going to give 2 top tips. Number one, I have mentioned both of these before. Number one is gain clarity in what you want to do. That can be via experimentation. That could also be via simply writing something down. We're all great at, we all know what business plans are, but have you ever created a plan for your own career? Most people don't. So actually go and write it down in terms of clarity of what you want. Secondly is visibility. Get yourself visible. Again, it's not what you know. It's not even about who you know. It's about who knows you. And LinkedIn is the perfect place to do that now. So if it's posting twice a week, but posting something of value, posting your opinion on something that matters in your chosen field. If you can do that and build up that sort of expertise or the perception of being the expert, that's what I would definitely suggest to do now. Get people to know who you are. So those are the 2 elements, definitely.
Two really good tips with those. And you might have already given this story already because you've given some quite good stories already as part of this episode. But what is the best piece of career advice that you think you've ever been given? And could you share that with us if you haven't already covered it?
It's an absolute classic, and it was in the first day of my working life at Grant Thornton, where the senior partner took all the new trainees into a room, and the one sentence that he did say, I'll never forget this, he said, "There's no such thing as a stupid question." Sorry, let me rephrase that. He actually said, "You will never get sued for asking what you think is a stupid question." If you don't know it, go and find out, because it's not a stupid question if you don't know. So if you don't know, folks, go and find out. That's probably the best piece of advice I've ever been given.
Yeah, no, that's a really good one, actually, because a lot of people anyway, I think, are scared of asking questions in fear of looking stupid. But I'm with you on that. I ask way too many questions and people joke about it all the time. But I just think if you don't ask the question, then you're missing out on the opportunity to learn something and even do something properly or better.
Asking effective questions is a massive sign of strength.
Absolutely. So if people want to find out a little bit more about you, your business, etc., are there any places in particular that they can go to find out more?
It's all LinkedIn at the moment. Absolutely. Go to James Perry Accounting Success Coach on LinkedIn and you'll be able to find out all about me. There is a website being rebuilt currently. There is going to be a YouTube channel that will be released in the future, but at this stage it's all primarily LinkedIn. And if anybody wants to send me a DM, it'd be a pleasure to have a conversation.
Lovely, that's great, thanks. And thank you very much for joining me today, James. Everything you've said, I'm sure people will find exceptionally useful. And I found it an interesting and refreshing conversation at the same time.
Great, absolute pleasure. Thank you very much, Jack.
If you enjoyed this episode and are further interested in progressing your tax career towards what success means to you, you can sign up for my free course to help you do exactly that. Visit the show notes at thetaxprofessionalspodcast.com/TTPP27 to sign up. The show notes also include a link to James's LinkedIn profile where he shares great videos and articles to help you with your exams and career, a link to his website and a link to the book where you can find further information about the time quadrants that James referred to for deciding the important tasks to work on. It's called The 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. I was recommended to read this book by a coach I had a few years back, and I can honestly say it made such a massive impact on my development. The most impactful book I've read from that perspective. Episode 16, The 7 Habits of Highly Effective Tax Professionals, was my spin on this book to make it relevant for tax professionals. You can listen to that at thetaxprofessionalspodcast.com/TTPP16. But that's it for this episode. I hope you liked the episode and have taken away some useful points to help you progress, develop and improve your tax career. Until next time.